Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar about online and offline shopping. We're going to focus on some vocabulary, whether that's for shopping in person or shopping while we surf the net. So, if you are a shopper or you know someone who enjoys shopping, this is the webinar for you. My name is Charles. I am one of the Tutlo tutors here on the platform, and I am one of the webinar hosts as well, which is, of course, why you see me here today. But for those of you who are here with us live, I would like to kindly ask if you can just let me know how our connection is by saying something in our chat. So if you can hear me well and you can see me well, please do let me know by saying something in the chat. You can say hi, hello, or maybe even let me know what your favorite thing to do when shopping or your favorite store to go shopping at. And if we had any connection problems, maybe I know we've had some recent issues with some people joining the webinar, but if everything has been all right, please do let me know, as that is quite important for us today. But so far, it seems that everything is all right. That's amazing. Hello, Katarzyna. Hello, Greg, Eva, Alexander, Agnieszka. Hello, ZB. Hello. We have a bunch of other people here today. That's amazing. I won't be able to go over everyone's names, but hello. We have two Gregs here today. We got a few Agnieszkas. Hello, Hannah. Hello, Magda. Hope you are all doing well. So far, it seems that everything is okay. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. I'm glad. Now, of course, for those of you who are just joining us, as I do see some new names, like I said already, my name is Charles. It's an absolute privilege to be with you here today. For today's lesson, before we get into anything, I just want to remind you all to just please let me know that our connection is okay during the duration of today's webinar. If there are any issues, don't hesitate to let me know, and I'll do my best to make sure I can help everyone out. And as we are waiting for a few more people to join us today, maybe let me know, where are you joining us from today? As I am joining you all today from the Philippines. So I am joining you from my country in Asia. So maybe let me know, where are you joining us from? I know that in Europe, right, and other countries, spring is around. So maybe even let me know what the weather is like in my country, in the Philippines. Since we are located in Southeast Asia, we are a small little tropical island country, which is why we are very famous for our beaches and our hot weather and tropical weather. Recently in the Philippines, it has started to become our summertime. So an average day is in the 30s, I believe, probably let's say 35 on average during the daytime. At nighttime, it will go down a little bit, maybe to, let's say, 27 degrees, 26 degrees on a good day. So we are enjoying our, I guess, our hot weather, which is quite an interesting time to be sure. But beyond that, I see we have people joining us from Poland for the most part. That's amazing. So whether you're in the big part of your country, in the capital city, or in another part of your country, it's great that you are able to be with us here today. Now, before we get into anything, as a few more people have just joined in, we'll give maybe a couple more minutes, as we'll just give some time in case some people are running behind. Let me explain quickly what we are going to talk about today and what to expect. Obviously, with today's topic of online and offline shopping, we are going to be talking about what the difference is, learn some fun facts about it, because of course we want to talk about how online shopping has been growing. All over the world, the internet is becoming a bigger and bigger deal and becoming more and more important, which is quite impressive to say the least. And with that growing, with the growth of the internet, of course, one area that's been growing a lot is online shopping. So we want to talk about how that's grown and learn some vocabulary terms for it, but we'll also learn vocabulary terms for both areas, whether we are talking about online shopping or offline shopping. We're going to discuss simply how it is able to be talked about, how it's able to be discussed, some terms that can be used for both or can be used for one or in other situations as well, as today's main focus is about vocabulary. Now, before we get into anything, last couple quick reminders before we get started with anything too serious. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, I would just like to remind you how long our webinars are here at Tutlo. Typically, we go on within a half-hour time frame. So we began today at around 7:30. So that means we will do our best to finish within the next 20 to 25 minutes, as close to 8 p.m. as possible, to be respectful of everyone's time. And along with that, I encourage you to use our chat. It's going to be open for our whole webinar today. You can make comments about what we're learning, participate in some activities, and even ask some questions, as no question is off the table. We will even have some time during the end of today's webinar for a few minutes of Q&A. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask it. And I encourage you, let's engage with one another in our chat. Let's participate. Let's make this active and fun. So as I talk, feel free to type and chat. That way we can engage with one another. Let's go ahead. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the world of shopping. And with online shopping, we typically refer to that as something along the lines of e-commerce. Now, if you're familiar with e-commerce or not, e-commerce is simply explained as the method of buying and selling goods online. And typically, these would be, for example, your e-commerce stores. Through the developments of places like Amazon, eBay, or Allegro in other countries, or in my country of the Philippines, our biggest e-commerce store or shop is through the application called Shopee, as it's a very interesting name. But e-commerce is just that idea of people buying and selling goods online, which has, like I mentioned earlier, grown astronomically, because it's a huge change from your standard, what we call brick and mortar. When we have a brick and mortar store, it simply means just a store with a physical location. And there are a lot of differences with having a brick and mortar store and having a e-commerce store, right? If you're working in e-commerce, you don't have to worry about a physical location. All you need to do is have an online platform to sell your business, right? Whether that was created in your own country. For example, there are some that are unique to certain countries. Some tried to expand, like I know that Shopee was not allowed into Poland. Poland has its own thing going on. Amazon has grown in all the countries in the world almost. eBay is still around. So instead of having to have a physical brick and mortar store, e-commerce has definitely grown. But of course, there are some big benefits to having a classic brick and mortar as well, right? You'll have loyal customers who come into your location. Depending on the products that you sell, it definitely is still very important. For example, you have your supermarkets, your grocery stores that still are definitely very important to have when it comes to a physical location. But how big exactly has e-commerce gotten in the past few years? Well, a study was done around a year ago, and e-commerce sales was actually a very impressive number. It generated over 5.7 trillion US dollars through e-commerce alone, which is definitely a huge industry. And of course, with the world nowadays, it's growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger and more important. And through one of those big websites that we talked about, one of those big platforms, Amazon is kind of heading the front of online retail websites, and it's leading the charge in the e-commerce world and e-commerce business, because through places like Amazon, or like I mentioned, ours in the Philippines, our version of it, or whatever your version of Amazon is, or if you use Amazon itself, it's a huge way for people to be able to have small businesses on the side, or even to run full-time businesses, to be able to send products back and forth throughout the country, international, overseas, and to be able to afford buying things from other parts of the world at a cheaper price. Whether you're wanting a new book from your favorite author, e-commerce or Amazon has been able to make that easier for us. And of course, with the growth of the internet and e-commerce, that also brings the growth of the use of smartphones. And I use a smartphone. Most of us do use smartphones. And I guess one way to cut back on spending so much online is to spend a little bit less time on your phone, because apparently using your smartphone takes up around 70% of all online retail visits. So essentially, it's saying that 7 out of every 10 retail visits is done through the use of your phone. So if you're a bit guilty of maybe spending a bit too much time looking at things online and buying things online, a good option is to cut back on it and maybe just spend a little bit less time on your phone. And I am teaching myself that. But this year so far, in 2023, it's around predictions that the average person in the United States will spend over $5,000 shopping online. Now, of course, when we talk about average numbers, it's kind of hard to gauge it, because for some people, they'll spend a lot more and other people will spend a lot less. So the average is kind of an interesting statistic, but it just goes to show that a lot of people will be spending a lot of money shopping online. And I might be one of those people, right? But of course, there are many differences, like I mentioned, in the world of online shopping through e-commerce and the world of traditional brick and mortars. Because, for example, one thing people look at a lot is availability. Now, availability is simply quite different with e-commerce and brick and mortars, because online shopping is available around the clock. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the phrase around the clock simply means 24/7. It's just happening all the time, right? While if I'm going and shopping at a brick and mortar, it's only available to go there during store hours, right? But if I'm having that availability of e-commerce, I can shop at 1 in the morning, 10 o'clock at night, 6 a.m., or in the middle of the day, and I don't have to leave my house. So the availability is very different online and offline. But payment method is a bit different depending on the kind of thing that you use. Because payment method, it just simply means how you pay for something, right? Typically, physical stores can give you a few more options, including cash, bank transfers, and so much more. Online, you're pretty much limited to online payments. In some places, they might offer you a cash on delivery system, but for the most part, if you are shopping online, you're going to have to rely to pay through online means, right? And if you're a cash person, it might make it a little bit more difficult. And of course, with online shopping, we do have to spend a little bit more money because of shipping costs. Shipping costs, it just means how much money it takes for the company you bought it from to send it to your house. Because online shopping's always involving a little bit of shipping fees. Now, of course, since we are on that discussion of the idea of focusing on today's vocabulary, let's get the ball rolling by specifically talking about our first word, and that is if we go to a shop and we have to go into a queue. Now, a queue is simply a line of people who are waiting for their turn, just like on the picture on your screen. When we have a queue, this can be for most of the time in-person shopping. There might be some queues with online shopping. Maybe if you're trying to buy a limited, let's say limited edition, I don't know, shoe. If you're trying to buy something like a concert ticket or whatever it is, there might be queues for that as well online. But your typical queue, you're going to find in an in-person store. Now, quick thing, as we are going through these vocabulary terms, I encourage you to write down these terms so you'll be able to practice them later on with your tutor or on your own. Or simply beyond that as well, if there are some terms that are a bit confusing for you, don't hesitate to ask it in our chat, and I will do my best to give you as good of an answer as I can. All right? So remember, just a queue. It is just a line of people waiting their turn. Now, as we move from a queue, right, when we're standing in line to pay for our items, we are eventually going to get to what we call the checkout, or the point where the goods are paid for. And in person, you're going to have to pay at what we call the counter. And there also is a checkout for our online shopping, right? We add our items together or our goods together, and then we have to go to the checkout, pay for these items that we want. We have different payment methods, like I mentioned earlier, whether that's cash, card, transfers, Venmos, applications. There's a lot of different ways to pay nowadays at the checkout. But there are some times you can purchase an item online, or you can purchase an item in person and you don't really want it anymore. Or maybe you ordered online, they sent you the wrong item, and you're going to have to return that item. It just means to give back the product, and you're typically going to get your money back, right? Like, let's say I paid $50 for a new shirt, but I got the shirt and it's the wrong size. Or I got the shirt and there is a hole in the shirt. That's obviously never a good sign. So I'm going to have to return it. I'm going to have to give it back. Now, an interesting term to make sure that we do. Oh, okay. Jack had a great term in the chat. He's saying cash back. Okay, a quick thing to note. So cash back, when we are talking about it, it's a little bit different. When we're talking about a return, we will get our cash back. That is correct. If we have space between those two words, we get cash back. They're separate words. But when we have the term cash back put together, that refers to money we get for spending money. Typically, for example, through a credit card, right? If I spend $100, I get $1 cash back. That's different from getting my cash back when I return a product. So small thing just to keep in mind with that difference. All right? But now, the next thing as we are going into our terms is an interesting word, an aisle. Now, it's spelled a little bit weird. It's spelled A-I-S-L-E, and it's pronounced aisle, but it simply is the passage between things for people to walk, right? Like just like in this photo, you have the shelf here and you have the shelf here, and the space in between is the aisle. And it can be used in many different contexts, not just for shopping. You can walk down the aisle of a bus, the aisle of an airplane, or if you're at a wedding, the bride is going to walk down the aisle. It's the passage to walk for people. But of course, since we're talking about shopping and things like that, we're not going to get out of it without talking about a sale. But like many words in English, it can have multiple meanings. A sale is simply an exchange of goods for money, right? I made the sale, right? If you work in sales, you're familiar with that term, right? I made a sale. I exchange a good or a service for a certain amount of money, right? I made the sale. But with shopping, typically we think of sale as a period of time where items are available for a cheaper price, like 50% off, 20% off, or buy one, get one free, because we are all after those discounts, right? Those reductions on the price of an item. And that's one of the best sales tactics ever to get me to spend my money. Is I see a good sale, it gets very tempting, right? But of course, when we are going ahead and maybe during the Christmas time, or we're going grocery shopping or all those kinds of things, and we are buying things, we are going to put those things in what we call our cart. Our cart is simply a small vehicle that we use to carry our items, right? If you're at the grocery store, you typically are going to buy a lot of things. So you have to put those things in a cart. Or if you're online shopping, before you get to the checkout, you add it to cart. Because everything we have in our cart before we go to the checkout is part of our order, the total things that we have purchased. And just like this person who went grocery shopping, in their cart, they have some fruits, some vegetables, and some other necessities, and a little bit of wine, I think that is, right? So these are our terms for today. Nothing too crazy, but these are essential vocabulary terms to know. And we learned a couple of fun phrases like e-commerce, online shopping, and Jack brought up a good term of cash back and getting our cash back. Now, I know I've done a lot of talking over the past 20 or so minutes, and I want to get you all involved as well. So let's do a little exercise together. Up on your screen, there is an incomplete sentence, and I just want you to complete it for me. So if you can do me the favor of letting me know, what is the correct option to fit into our sentence? Do we say walking down the A aisle in a store can be hard when it is busy? Or walking down the B aisle in a store can be busy? They're both pronounced the same, but the spelling is different. And which is the correct spelling for this context? Do we say I-S-L-E or A-I-S-L-E? Let me know in the chat. I'll give everyone maybe, let's say, 5 to 10 more seconds, and then we will move on to our second one. If you gave me the answer of letter B, A-I-S-L-E, that is correct. Why? Because this is an aisle. Remember, the area to walk in a store. If we spell something as I-S-L-E, it's a bit of a slang abbreviation of an island, right? Like the Philippines is made up of many islands, right? So one island, some people in slang can call it an aisle. But if we're talking about a place to walk, like in the store, it is A-I-S-L-E. Now, let's try one more that has 2 options. And I want you to tell me which order is correct. Do we say, I want to A, return my order, or I want to order my return? What is the correct answer here? Let me know in our chat. Is it A or is it B? I want to return my order or I want to order my return. Let me know. All about sentence structure here, right? We learned what return is and we learned what order is. But what's the proper order in this sentence? What's the proper structure? So I'll give maybe, let's say, 5 seconds, and then I'll give the answer, and we'll move on to the last stage of our webinar as our time is slowly drawing to a close. So our correct answer is, like I see in the chat, letter A, because return my order. You're giving back all the things you bought, not order my return. You're going to return the order. Very good job, everyone. So now that we have that covered, let's go ahead. A quick summary of what we've learned today. Just remember, we've talked about e-commerce shopping the whole time, right? We talked about how people are buying and selling goods online. And we talked about how they can be quite different from traditional brick and mortars, right? From availability to payment methods to shipping costs and all those kinds of things. And of course, remember those important vocabulary terms that we have learned, right? When we are discussing the idea of brick and mortar stores, online shopping, or even other terms such as aisle and aisle, make sure we learn them all in those contexts. All right? So like I mentioned earlier, we are going to have some time for a Q&A, and that is just a quick question and answer. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Please go ahead and let me know in our chat, and I will do my best to answer your questions for you. For those of you who don't have any questions, please don't go anywhere yet. I would love some feedback of what you thought of today's webinar. So for those of you who are here with us live, there is a poll on your screen that just asks, did you find today's webinar useful? You know, did you learn something? Did you benefit from it? I know today wasn't the most complicated topic, but it's important to master those essential vocabulary terms. So if this was useful, I'm glad. All right, and I don't see any questions yet, but we still have maybe a minute or two for any questions. And I'll run one last poll as we wait. And this question is just, would you like to join us again for another event like this in the future? If you are interested, we do our webinars quite often. So find a topic that you would love to learn about, like vocabulary. We'll have some grammar topics and so much more. So don't hesitate, and we would love to see you there. All right, so thank you all for filling out that poll. I appreciate it. And I don't see any questions. So before we wrap up for today, a quick reminder, I encourage you to check out our social media. We're present on things like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, where we post things that keep you updated about anything happening at Tutlo. We post some fun facts, some learning tips, even some videos to keep you all entertained. Now, before we finish, thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you for being such an amazing crowd. Thank you for participating in our chat, in our activities, and making comments about what we're learning. I'm glad that everything was clear for everyone. And I encourage you, like I mentioned, take some time to practice what we've learned. Go ahead and master the essential vocabulary terms. That way you're able to have these kinds of conversations with native speakers, or even when you are traveling if you need to use English. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Have a fantastic rest of your week and enjoy your weekend, as we are only a couple days away from that. Take care, and I hope to see you all again soon, maybe through another webinar or even a lesson on the platform. Till then, stay safe and goodbye for now.